and they all thought it was going to be a big flop, a complete disaster, and they were rather pleased at the thought. Well,
Olivia de Havilland had a bitter, lifelong family feud with her sister Joan Fontaine. What kept the two movie icons from reconciling even after one passed away? And why did Olivia call her sister the Dragon Lady? What you know isn't the whole story. Find out now as the story unfolds. Lawsuit against FXN. You will never find any recording of Olivia de Havilland calling her sister, actress Joan Fontaine, a bitch. At least that's what her lawyers are claiming in a lawsuit against FX over her portrayal in the series Feud, Bet, and Joan. The legal battle revolves around a seemingly small but crucial issue: semantics, that is, the precise words used to describe a character. In the film, de Havilland, played by Catherine Zeta-Jones, calls her sister a bitch. But in real life, de Havilland never used that word. Her quip was Dragon Lady, still a negative comment, but not a vulgar one. According to Variety, de Havilland's lawyers objected to the script, arguing that using such a strong term was false and defamatory. The relationship between de Havilland and Joan Fontaine was certainly fraught, but she never stooped to such an insult, especially in public. Judge Halim Danidina, one of 3 judges who reviewed the case, posed a telling question: is there a significant difference between calling someone a bitch and a dragon? De Havilland's lawyer answered bluntly, "Yes, sir. In my family, if someone said the word bitch, they would wash their mouth out with soap," FX later argued. Their lawyer said the character's use of the word bitch was not too far from de Havilland's real personality and cited an example. In the book, Bet and Joan, The Divine Feud, 1989, de Havilland is quoted as saying, "I don't like to play the bitch." The film Feud also has a scene where her character says the same thing, then adds, "Call my sister." FX's lawyers added that the film was not intended to portray de Havilland as rude, but rather that she was portrayed as a loyal and supportive friend of Bette Davis. They also explained that the script changed the word Dragon Lady to bitch because bitch sounded more contemporary and had the same meaning. After the initial article was published, de Havilland's legal team reached out to Vanity Fair to clarify their position. Ms. de Havilland is suing because FX had her character, without her permission or evidence, call her sister a bitch in front of other actors and directors. Both were young actresses building their careers. FX, meanwhile, is trying to dismiss the lawsuit under California's anti-SLAPP law. The law is designed to prevent baseless lawsuits that are intended to silence people or make them spend money defending themselves. In other words, FX believes that the representation of characters in movies is a creative freedom protected by law. Despite coming from the same background, working in the same film industry, and reaching the pinnacle of fame, the story between Olivia de Havilland and Joan Fontaine is a clear demonstration of a painful truth. The initial connection does not always exist, or never really exists. Competition. Unlike many famous sisters who celebrate and support each other, the relationship between Olivia de Havilland and Joan Fontaine is a heartbreaking example of a broken relationship at its core. Their conflict did not arise from the glamour or fame of Hollywood, but from their childhoods, where rivalry was instilled by their family environment. Born only 15 months apart, Olivia and Joan grew up in an atmosphere where competition was encouraged rather than loved. In her memoir, No Bed of Roses, Joan Fontaine wrote, "From the moment we were born, our parents, or perhaps our nannies, did not encourage us to do anything but compete with each other. Their parents, Walter de Havilland, an eccentric English scholar, and Lillian, an aspiring actress, were unable to make their marriage work. The pressures of raising two sickly daughters, especially Joan, caused a rift between them. In 1919, Lillian decided to take the two children to San Francisco, leaving Walter in Tokyo to live with his mistress. From there, the two sisters grew up in a harsh, single-parent household. Their personalities became increasingly different. Olivia was strong-willed, hard-working, often praised, and considered the perfect daughter in her mother's eyes. Joan was sensitive, anxious, and often ill. Her mother's favoritism was said to be a major factor in Joan's feeling of being sidelined. Olivia once asserted in a 2016 interview with Vanity Fair, "I loved her very much when we were young." But Joan strongly denied this in her memoir. "I cannot remember a single act of kindness from Olivia during my entire childhood." In 1925, family life became even more strained when their mother remarried to George Fontaine, a man whom both Olivia and Joan described as domineering and abusive. Olivia called him the Iron Duke. In this tense environment, Joan felt isolated while Olivia was favored by her mother. Joan said that Olivia often bullied her cruelly. One of the most controversial stories is that Olivia tormented Joan by reciting Bible passages about the crucifixion aloud with glee, something Joan described as both terrifying and mentally torturous. "I experienced not only man's inhumanity to man," she wrote, "but also sister's inhumanity to sister." Another incident that revealed Olivia's deep contempt was a writing assignment from the age of 9 in which Olivia is said to have written, "I leave all my beauty to my sister Joan because she has nothing." Adding fuel to the fire was an IQ test that Joan recounted, which showed that she had a higher IQ than Olivia, something that only added to the tension between the two. Perhaps the most serious incident Joan remembers was when Olivia pushed her off the slate edge of the swimming pool. According to Joan, Olivia then jumped on me and broke my collarbone. Olivia did not deny that there had been a fight, but claimed that Joan had grabbed her ankle first. Family relations were so strained that Joan chose to leave. She moved back to live with her father in Japan, but the misery was not over. Joan alleges that her father, Walter, made inappropriate advances, adding another psychological wound to her already traumatic life. The initial bond never really existed, and as they both embarked on their Hollywood dreams, the gap did not close, but instead became a simmering battle line between the two talented women. Can the spotlight heal the wounds of childhood? Or has the glory caused the sisterly bond to fracture beyond repair? From the movie dream to the bitter rivalry between the two sisters, what turned their friendship into decades of silence? From Hollywood dreams to sibling competition, the childhood rivalry between the sisters quickly developed into a fierce professional rivalry that lasted for decades and became the story of the all-out feud between Olivia de Havilland and Joan Fontaine in Hollywood. Olivia's path to film stardom began when she was just 18, discovered while auditioning for a role in the adaptation of A Midsummer Night's Dream, 1935. Soon after she signed a 7-year contract with Warner Bros., her first step on the road to stardom. She immediately starred alongside Errol Flynn in a series of blockbusters such as Captain Blood, 1935, The Adventures of Robin Hood, 1938, and They Died with Their Boots On, 1941. It was when she played Melanie Wilkes in Gone with the Wind, 1939, that Olivia officially entered the ranks of Hollywood's leading actresses. Meanwhile, Joan Fontaine was turned down for the role of Melanie because she was too sophisticated, and for that reason, she offered her sister support. But that initial spark became a new wave of resentment in Joan, a feeling of being left behind. When Joan decided to audition for Hollywood, a problem arose. If they both shared the last name de Havilland, it would create brand overlap. Joan decided to take her stepfather's last name, Fontaine, as a way to set herself apart. But Olivia immediately retorted Joan Fontaine. "I don't know who she is." Joan initially struggled. Her debut film, A Damsel in Distress, 1937, was a box office flop, and she was virtually eliminated from the industry. Then her fortunes changed when she was cast as the female lead in Rebecca, 1940, a Hitchcock film that Olivia could not appear in due to contractual obligations. Rebecca's huge success paved the way for Joan to enter the ranks of sought-after actresses, especially in classic Hitchcock roles. But their rivalry did not stop at fame or roles. They also overlapped romantically. In 1939, Joan married Brian Aherne, who had been rumored to be intimate with Olivia. It was more than just a marriage. It was marked by Joan as a resounding victory in the ruthless competition between the two sisters. The climax of the rivalry came at the 1942 Oscars, an unprecedented event, when for the first time two sisters were nominated for Best Actress, Olivia for Hold Back the Dawn, Joan for Suspicion. The whole world watched. Joan won, and Olivia's reaction in the auditorium became a memorable moment. Some say Olivia tried to congratulate her, but Joan coldly refused. Others say she simply said, "We did it," a remark that implied that their differences would never be forgotten. It was the decisive turning point, the beginning of more than 2 decades of fierce professional rivalry and irreconcilable personal estrangement. A feud that Hollywood will forever remember as the legendary sister rivalry. But that's just from the outside. What about behind the scenes? Can you imagine sisters in the same category with the same ambition in the same room? But only one was honored. And when the winner's name was announced, what happened? The Oscar moment that broke everything. The 1942 Academy Awards, a night to honor cinema, turned out to be a turning point in one of Hollywood's most famous and enduring feuds. When both of their names appeared in the Best Actress nominations, Olivia for Hold Back the Dawn, Joan for Alfred Hitchcock's Suspicion, the atmosphere at the Biltmore Bowl immediately became tense. In what was seen as a deliberate move to heighten the drama, the Oscars had seated the sisters side by side at the same table. It wasn't just a seat. It was a backstage for one of the most curious and talked about personal moments of the 1940s. All the cameras and eyes in the room seemed to be focused on their table as actress Ginger Rogers stepped up to the microphone to announce the winner. And then, the name Joan Fontaine rang out. Not applause, not a burst of joy, but shock. Joan was frozen. In her memoir, she recounts, "I stared at Olivia, who was sitting across from me, as if it were up to her to decide whether I should stand up or not. Olivia leaned forward coldly and whispered, 'Get up there.' A command, not a congratulatory one. Joan recalls feeling as if she were pulled back to her childhood when she was only 4 years old, overwhelmed by her older sister's cold gaze. She stepped onto the stage to receive the golden statuette in a state of near unconsciousness, while the audience whispered endlessly about the strange tension between the two bright stars with the same surname, but no longer in love. But that was not the climax. In 1947, Olivia won her first Oscar for her role in To Each His Own, a major milestone in her career, marking her escape from the shadow of Joan Fontaine's sister to become her person in the film industry. Backstage, Joan, with a rare bit of goodwill, walked up, held out her hand as if to close the years of separation. She smiled slightly. "Congratulations." But Olivia refused that handshake, not in words, but in action. She turned around, completely ignoring her sister, in front of the lens of photographer Jaime Fink, who captured the moment. A silent but sharp image Vanity Fair magazine called a Hollywood legend, where love is buried under the spotlight. Why was Olivia so cold? Part of the reason is said to have come from a comment Joan made about Olivia's husband novelist, Marcus Goodrich. Joan once quipped, "All I know about him is that he's had 4 wives and written a book." It's a shame it wasn't the other way around. It may have been a momentary sarcasm, but for Olivia, who is always sensitive to her image and relationships, it was the final stab. After that event, the two sisters almost lost contact. No more handshakes, no more letters, even refusing to attend a loved one's funeral if the other was present. The feud didn't just exist behind the scenes in Hollywood. It lasted until the end of their lives. A rift that never healed, never forgave. In the glittering history of Hollywood, where glory and tragedy often go hand in hand, perhaps no relationship has been as fascinating and bitter as the feud between sisters Olivia de Havilland and Joan Fontaine. It was more than just a family feud. It was an epic tale of jealousy, fierce rivalry, and unresolved hurt played out in the spotlight of a world hungry for scandal and legend. Olivia and Joan were not just biological sisters. They were two of the brightest stars of their generation, competing in an industry that had no tolerance for duplicity. From an early age, their relationship was antagonistic. Born in 1916 and 1917 respectively, they grew up in troubled homes, with divorced parents and an ambitious mother who held high expectations for both daughters. By many accounts, Olivia, as the eldest sister, was often seen as serious, disciplined, and ambitious, while Joan tended to be rebellious, soft-spoken, and jealous of the favors Olivia received. Their rivalry became public as they both found success in their acting careers, especially in the 1940s, the golden age of classical Hollywood. It all came to a head in 1942 at the Academy Awards. Both Olivia and Joan were nominated for Best Actress, an unprecedented event at the time, and one that has hardly been repeated since. Olivia was honored for her touching performance in Hold Back the Dawn, while Joan was nominated for Suspicion, a thriller directed by Alfred Hitchcock. The Oscars not missing the opportunity for drama deliberately arranged for the two sisters to sit at the same table. The atmosphere at the Biltmore Bowl Hotel that day was tense. Guests whispered, the press scrutinized, and cameras prepared to record every tiny reaction. When Ginger Rogers opened the envelope and announced Joan Fontaine as the winner, the room held its breath, waiting for Olivia's reaction. But it was Joan's reaction that stunned everyone. She sat motionless, expressionless, staring straight at Olivia, not daring to stand up. In a chilling moment, Olivia is said to have leaned toward Joan and whispered, "Go up there." Joan later described the feeling as if she had been sucked back into her childhood. "I was suddenly a 4-year-old girl, again facing my terrifying older sister." Despite being the winner, Joan felt completely overshadowed by Olivia's presence. If 1942 was the first storm, 1947 was the real storm. When Olivia won her first Oscar for To Each His Own, Joan came backstage and held out her hand in a gesture of reconciliation, hoping to mend the years of rivalry. But Olivia, still bitter over Joan's sarcastic remark about her husband, the writer Marcus Goodrich, whom Joan had once quipped, All I know about him is that he's had 4 wives and written a book. Sadly, it's not the other way around. Turned away, ignoring the outstretched hand, photographer Jaime Fink captured the moment in history. Joan's eyes transfixed her arm outstretched in the air, creating a photo that Vanity Fair called the symbol of a Hollywood legend. The ensuing estrangement only deepened. The tipping point came with the death of their mother Lillian in 1975. According to Joan, Olivia took charge of the funeral arrangements, from the handling of the estate to deciding on a memorial service without consulting her. Joan was invited only after she threatened to leak the news to the press. At the ceremony, not a word was exchanged between the sisters. Olivia scattered a handful of ashes, then silently handed me the urn, Joan recalled. That was my farewell. Olivia, I didn't say a word. I couldn't. After that, the two barely communicated. Every time Joan mentioned Olivia publicly in her 1978 memoir, No Bed of Roses, it was a further rift. Olivia, furious, changed the title of the book to No Shred of Truth whenever she mentioned it. While there were moments when outsiders hoped for reconciliation, like when Joan expressed a desire to see her sister before she died, or when Olivia sent her condolences after her sister's death in 2043, the reality was as cold as ice. In a rare interview in 2016, Olivia, then 100, called Joan the Dragon Lady and said that despite her talent, Joan had an astigmatism in her judgment of people and events that led her to act in ways that were unfair and hurtful. The sisters, 2 stars, who once shone brightly in the film industry, eventually left behind a sad legacy, a sisterhood forever fractured by the glare of fame, jealousy, and irrevocable words. What do you think made this sisterly relationship irreparable? Professional rivalry or personal hurt accumulated over the years? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. We would love to hear from you. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more interesting updates. Thank you, and see you in the next videos.